Hi guys, Tuesday, back in the kitchen. I'm so happy that we can cook together. We are locked down in my house, so it's really nice to be with you guys. And a couple of you direct messaged me yesterday that it was just nice to hear a different voice, so I get that. I thought it would be really fun to cook together every day this week and next week and who knows how long. I'll go on Instagram every day at noon Pacific time, and we'll just make something different every day. I'll give you the recipe ahead of time, so if you want to cook along with me, you can. It's St. Patrick's Day today, so I brought out my only green sweater. I'm in the spirit, and I thought it would be fun to make Irish soda bread. So Irish soda bread is a very easy recipe to make. A classic Irish soda bread actually doesn't require that many ingredients. It's usually some kind of like a whole grain, whole wheat flour with baking soda, salt, and buttermilk with the addition of possibly like currants, raisins, or caraway seeds. There are many variations of this recipe that are Americanized. So American Irish soda bread recipes will typically have the addition of, well, you guessed it, right? Sugar and maybe an egg to make it more cakey, but and sometimes even butter. But I'm using like kind of straightforward, classic Irish soda bread. I'm gonna eat this tonight with my family with a split pea and barley soup. So I like it a little bit more on the savory side as opposed to like cakey and sweet. Anyway, I'm gonna cook in real time with you. If you have questions, my daughter is helping me. She's home from college. She's manning the questions, so she'll shout them out to me as they come along, and I'll answer as many as I can. And then once I pop this into the oven, if there's other questions that you guys have about anything, it could just be about like pantry items that you have that you don't know what to do with, or how to freeze stuff, or how to thaw stuff. There's a lot of those questions happening right now, so feel free to ask me whatever you want. All right, Anna, you ready?
Yeah, is this recipe in your book?
No, but it's on my site. That's a great question. So I linked the recipe in the link in my profile on Instagram, so you guys can find it on my website, all right? Okay, so first up, we're gonna use some flour. I actually made a small version of this recipe earlier this morning. I wanted to try it out with gluten-free flour, and it actually worked pretty well. So I used, for that one, the Jovial multi-purpose gluten-free flour plus xanthan gum. So I just made a small one, so I halved the recipe, and I'm actually gonna have the recipe right now because we don't need two gigantic Irish soda bread loaves. I was joking with my friend earlier that I think the 19 in COVID-19 stands for how many pounds I'm gonna gain in quarantine. But anyway, so I just wanna make like 2 mini loaves. So I used all this flour, and then I added in a teaspoon of xanthan gum, which I always add to gluten-free flours. I think it helps just give some structure and elasticity, and then I followed the recipe exactly. It was done maybe like 5 or 10 minutes early, so you have to check that. So feel free to use whatever gluten-free flour blends you have. I would highly recommend the addition of the xanthan gum though. So the flour that I'm going to use today, I actually don't have whole wheat pastry flour anymore. I don't have any whole grain flours other than this whole wheat einkorn flour from Jovial Foods. Oh, it's like a Jovial day today. I'm happy for them. Okay, and then I'm going to use, so half of the whole grain flour here, and then half of this white einkorn flour here. So I'm going to mix them up. And for those of you just joining, I'm making Irish soda bread. I am gonna just do a half loaf, like so a half recipe. When you are measuring out flours, I always tell my students in my cooking classes to grab a fork and then just sort of lighten up the flour and fluff it up a little bit. Because if it's packed, whether it's in a jar or in your bag, then what's gonna happen is when you measure it, it's going to be mismeasured. You're gonna have an inaccurate amount. So I'm just trying to like lighten it up in here. And you can use a whisk as well. Great.
Can you explain what einkorn flour is and if it can be used instead of all-purpose flour?
Oh, great. Yes, I can totally explain what einkorn flour is and how you would swap it for all-purpose flour. So what it is, it's an ancient grain. It's not hybridized. It is related to wheat, so it does have gluten. And a lot of people, though, find that it is slightly more digestible for them than wheat. But again, it has gluten, so it is not appropriate if you are very sensitive to gluten. The other thing that I like about it, though, is that it does not contain any glyphosate. It is not sprayed with glyphosate. All the Jovial products come from Italy and they are not sprayed at all. So I'm much more comfortable now using it. I find that the einkorn flour does not perform quite as well, though, in recipes that have a lot of fat. So if I were you, I would also kind of explore it on the Jovial website and just see what their recipes look like and how you would recommend them. In this recipe, because there's not a lot of fat in this recipe, I'm pretty confident that it will work. And I generally do sub it 1-for-1 in recipes with like an all-purpose flour. Okay, so I spooned 1 cup in here. Again, I'm making a half batch of this. I'm making a small loaf. So I'm just going to take I always have a ruler on hand for leveling. So I'll do half that, and then let's just scoop this back into my bag here. And then I'm also gonna do, where's my spoon? Where's my spoon? Probably in the bag. It is. I'm gonna spoon the whole flour, the wholemeal flour, into my cup measure, and then just do the same thing. Even though like a traditional Irish soda bread has like all whole grain flour, like it's really, really weedy, I find that the texture can get a little, it can just be a little coarse, right? So I prefer to do half and half. And I'm gonna scoop this in here. Perfect. So now we have our 2 flours, and then all we have to do for our dry ingredients is add in some salt. So I'm using just my pink Himalayan salt here, like so, and then baking soda. It's called Irish soda bread because of the baking soda. Now the baking soda does need an acid to, I'm gonna break this up, I felt like a little bit of clumpies in here. The baking soda needs an acid to be activated. So you can't put just regular milk or almond milk in here. You have to have an acidic agent. So that's why all the recipes will call for buttermilk, which is acidic. And what's nice about using the buttermilk, besides allowing us to be able to activate that baking soda, is that the acid in the buttermilk will prevent the gluten from getting too tough, so it will make it a little bit softer. So I'll show you what I did ahead of time. I actually don't have buttermilk today, and I don't have regular milk, and I don't have regular yogurt, and I'm not going out to the store. So what I did was I took my husband's oat milk, which he likes this malt oat milk, and then I added some lemon juice, and I just let it kind of sit, and it's starting to like not curdle, but it's starting to sour a bit. So that's a great substitution. In the Instagram post, what I did was I've given you some buttermilk substitutions. You can also sub kefir 1-for-1 with buttermilk, and it will give you an equally good result. Otherwise, do half yogurt and half milk, and then you'll get that sourness that way. Okay. I'm going to now add some green raisins. This is where the sweetness is going to come in for me. But if you wanted this to be sweet, you can throw in a couple of tablespoons of sugar. But that's not the way I like my Irish soda bread. So I'm going to throw in some golden raisins or green raisins. I actually used these yesterday, and they look like this. They're not like super bright and pretty like some of the other golden raisins that you see in the store, because these are not preserved with sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is something that helps fresh fruit, when you dry it, kind of stay that bright color. But again, it's a preservative, and it's particularly bad for people that have any sort of like a lung sensitivity, like an asthma. But we just don't need preservatives, right? So I don't mind that these are not like super bright and colorful. We are better off without. Okay, so
Where can people buy Jovial flour products?
Oh, that's a great question. So the einkorn flour, my Whole Foods has it. They have it sort of in like a little bit of a special section, but you can get it on their website. Unfortunately, they are overloaded with orders right now, and they say that their orders are not going to be arriving for like 3 weeks to people's homes. They have plenty of product, they just can't handle the demand. But Thrive Market has a lot of their products, and trying to think of anybody else, but Whole Foods is where I get it. It's a great question. Okay, any other questions, Anna?
No, not as
Okay, perfect. So let's make a well in the center of our flour, and I'm adding in the fake buttermilk, like that. And then I'm gonna do this with my hands, but before I do, I'm gonna take some of the white flour. And for those of you that don't have einkorn, it's fine. My recipe calls for all-purpose flour, so just use that. We gotta use what we've got right now. So I'm gonna really make sure that this is well floured. And then I'm going to just kind of use my hands and pull this together. This could not be easier, which is great, and you probably have the ingredients on hand. If you don't have lemon juice to make buttermilk, you can use an apple cider vinegar, you can use a white vinegar. That is totally fine as well. Okay, so it's a little bit wet. You know, I've never made this with einkorn before, and I think I'm gonna add in a bit of more flour because it's a little bit too wet in my estimation. So let's grab a little bit more, like so. That was like another tablespoon. Okay, perfect. And then we'll pull this together, and then I'm going to put this onto my floured countertop, and then I'm gonna wash my hands. I'm still gonna actually add another little bit. Okay. So this is something, like I just said, I've never done before with einkorn flour. It works with the all-purpose perfectly well, but with the einkorn, it's a little different. Okay, and then put this onto a floured counter and pull it together like that. And this is when you go wash your hands. I think in the recipe I wrote to go wash your hands at this point, which I will. And then we're going to pat it into a circle and then shape it into a loaf. I already have a baking sheet ready to go. In the recipe it says to just grease a baking sheet and flour it, but I'm gonna use parchment instead. Easier cleanup. So we're gonna pull this loaf together and then sprinkle it with some more flour. And then we're gonna put this onto our, baking sheet, like that. And again, more washing. And then I'm gonna cut into it to make this shape. You know, when you see Irish soda bread, you see that shape where it's cut across like that, like just a little cross, okay? So now this goes into a 450-degree oven for 20 minutes to start. Anna, you wanna put that in the oven for us?
Yes.
And then you lower the temperature to 400 degrees and then you bake it for another 30 minutes. So I'm just doing a small loaf. So what I'm gonna do is time it for like 10 minutes less on the end, and then we will pull it out. So you want the bottom to be a little bit golden, and when you tap it, it's gonna sound kind of hollow. So, I mean, how easy was that? It took us 5 minutes. So this is my gluten-free loaf, and you see how that deep, those cracks gives you that distinctive look to it, and then see, it's golden on the underside, and then it has that like more hollow sound when you pat it. Now, the gluten-free loaf, in my opinion, is probably not gonna be quite exactly the same, but I think it'll still be good. And then also, if you end up not using dairy, what may happen is you will not get as golden a loaf because the milk solids in dairy, like if you're using a traditional buttermilk or you're doing, yogurt, like dairy yogurt and dairy milk, the milk solids will give a beautiful golden color. So what I did was, after it came out of the oven, I did just brush it a little bit with some soft butter, and that just gave it a little bit more of a sheen. So I'm just gonna slice off. I know I said I was gonna save this for dinner, but I'm just gonna slice this off because I'm really curious what the texture looks like inside. Oh, that's beautiful. So that is a nice texture. I mean, for gluten-free, that does look pretty good. And you can keep this at room temperature for about 2 days. And then I would keep it really well wrapped because it doesn't have a lot of fat in it. So let me just taste this. Super good. I like to make sure I get a little piece of raisin in each bite. Anna, you wanna try?
Yep. Thank you.
Like, this to me would be perfect with some like a soup, right?
Yeah.
And then if you toast it up the next day, you can have it with some jam or something like that, or like a piece of cheddar cheese would be really nice. I mean, I think that's what, if you're in Ireland, I'm assuming that's what you use it for, right? Have it with soups or have it with like a piece of cheese or something like that. Okay, what have you got for me, Anna?
Not too much, just people making comments saying they love the oat milk. Someone is also following this with their college daughter as she's home. Kinza says, it's okay, Mrs. Salzman. I can never save bread for later either.
This is a great opportunity, honestly. If you have college kids at home, I was giving my daughter some instruction last night when we were making dinner together. It's a great opportunity let's try to find some positives about this. It's a great opportunity for each of us to learn something new. It's a great opportunity to teach our kids something, especially we all have to eat. We're all home. We're all making our own food this week. So it is a great opportunity to teach our kids how to cook things that, I think would be valuable for them to cook on their own while they're at school. So, yes, Anna.
Does the regular recipe include sugar or cinnamon?
It doesn't. So what I said at the beginning of the live was that you can totally add sugar to this if you want, and that's more of like an American version, so it depends on how you want to eat this. And you can absolutely, I would say, probably no more than 1/4 cup of sugar for the entire recipe, or if you're having it like I did here, 2 tablespoons or something like that, and you would add that with the dry ingredients. I've actually never seen cinnamon in an Irish soda bread before. That's kind of an interesting twist. I've seen caraway seeds, I've seen currants, I've seen people add chocolate chips. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but it's your recipe. I know Ina Garten she does a very rich one that's very cakey, and she adds butter and orange zest, which I think sounds nice if you want to go that direction. So this is what I've done today. Again, we're gonna just take that out a little later, but I just wanted to show you the gluten-free version and how that turned out. It's definitely a little denser than the regular version with the all-purpose flour. So tomorrow, sorry, couldn't resist. Tomorrow, my publisher is allowing me to share a recipe from my new book. I'm really surprised that they are, but I asked. So my new book comes out in a month, or April 21st, and I wish it were out now because all the recipes are it's all about fast recipes and relies on pantry staples and stuff like that. So I'm kind of bummed that it didn't come out right now because we could all be using this cookbook. But I'm sharing a recipe. From there, I'm going to post the whole recipe on Instagram. We're going to be making tomato soup. It's so fabulous, and I'm sure. Well, I hope that you have all the ingredients. But if you don't, there are definite swaps. So we'll be making that tomorrow at noon. And I'm going to try and get on every single day at noon for the next 2 weeks so that we can cook together and you guys can ask me whatever questions you have. I'm also teaching, I still have my online classes, so if you guys are participating in my online cooking school, I will still have a new class every single month. The new one for March has already been taped and uploaded, so you can access that and join my private Facebook group because those girls are awesome and they are sharing so many resources and it's been great. And I also have a special running, so if you haven't been able to do them before, I've discounted the prices just to make it a little bit more accessible for everybody. Okay, are we good on it?
Yeah, how long have you been making this bread and does your family love it? I love it.
You do love it?
Yeah, I think it's really good.
I've been making Irish soda bread for a really long time. My aunt taught me how to make it and she does put a little bit of sugar in it. I think I posted this originally in 2017, but for sure I've been making it for, at least 20 years. And yeah, everybody loves it. What's not to like about carbs?
I still have a few more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
This person says, I have a random question. I have a pizza crust to use with no tomato sauce. Do you think I can blend a can of diced tomatoes and use that?
What I would say is yes, you totally can. I would doctor it up a little bit though, okay? So I would do a little olive oil with it. I would add some salt if it's not already salted, just to make it taste like something. And then you can totally use that. It's almost like a what's called a passata. It's like passed tomatoes. So you can just, be light with it because otherwise it's going to be very overwhelming. But yes, or you can just make tomato sauce. So you can saute some onion and there's a marinara sauce recipe on my site and then you can totally, make your own. Otherwise, yeah, you can do some fresh tomato. But again, a little olive oil and salt will go a long way. And then you can also add to that if you want some dried oregano or some dried basil or some dried Italian seasoning, again, just to give it a little bit more flavor. Another thing that you can do is make a white pizza. So depending on what you have on hand, you don't have to use tomato sauce on your pizza. You can just use cheese, you can do a little drizzle of some garlic and oil and drizzle that on. You can also add in a spread of, if you have any ricotta cheese, you could do that. But I love white pizza. Another thing you can do is, do you have pesto? We made some little French bread pizzas the other day. I made a red pepper pesto. That recipe's coming in my next book, but I had just had some jarred red peppers and I made a red pepper pesto. So you can also get creative that way as well. So it doesn't always have to be tomato sauce.
A couple people have asked about the ingredients for the tomato soup. Will you be uploading them before?
Yes.
Okay.
So once this live is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post another Instagram post and I'm going to do it immediately when we're done here, and then you'll have the entire recipe. So at least you can have it for whenever you want it. Not only the ingredients, but the entire recipe so you can follow along. The 2 recipes I've done in the last 2 days are on my website, so that's why I only provided the ingredients in the post and then links to the recipe in my Instagram profile. That's a great question.
How can they find your green muffin recipe?
Oh, it's so easy. First of all, about 300 people have made it, and I've just been posting random posts on my stories. So if you go to my stories, I think I've linked the recipe in every single green muffin post. Otherwise, if you go to my website, which is pamelasalzman.com, in the search button or the search box at the top, if you just type in green muffins, you'll find it. It's really, really easy to find. And those are the recipe of the day, I think. Okay, anything else, Anna?
Nope,
We're up
that's
to date?
it. Yeah, some people are making your recipes. One of them said that they're using up their brown bananas and that they made your green muffins
Great.
like they always do on this day.
Yes.
And then some mint chocolate chip smoothie for dessert.
Oh, fun! That's a great idea. So there's other ideas too. If you have avocados or matcha or spinach, There's a lot of things that you can do that are green, and again, things are always adaptable. I would say a great idea right now is to go to my website and look in this week's dinner planner. It's the most recent post, and then within the Tuesday post, which is today, there are different ideas and links for other things that you can do for St. Patrick's Day.
How can you use cabbage if you don't have a grill pan or a grill at all?
How can you use cabbage?
Yes.
If you don't have a grill pan or
a grill.
griddle?
Or no, like a grill.
A grill? I don't normally grill my cabbage anyway, so I think one of the most delicious ways to eat cabbage is just a basic saute. So you would take your cabbage and slice it, and then you saute it in a little bit of unsalted butter or a vegan butter. You could do half butter, half oil, and then saute it until it's just like nice and soft and tender, and then sprinkle it with salt, and then you're done. That's actually my favorite way, and it's the simplest way. On my site, I have a recipe for roasted cabbage. So you could take your green cabbage and then slice it into rounds. You know, if the core is on the bottom, and then you slice it into rounds, you can then see that recipe and then roast the cabbage on a baking sheet in the oven. It's delicious. Another way to use cabbage is, a very classic way, which is a coleslaw. So I've got a couple of recipes on my site for coleslaws, and I think those are, just easy to go with like a veggie burger or a sandwich or whatever. Another option is to stir cabbage into soups. So if you have a minestrone soup, if it says to use kale, you can absolutely use cabbage. So just keep in mind that kale is a form of cabbage. It is a cabbage. So if you see a recipe that calls for kale, you can absolutely use cabbage in its place for the most part.
Since a lot of markets are out of green cabbage, can you use purple cabbage in your deconstructed cabbage casserole?
In my deconstructed cabbage casserole? Oh, I don't see why not. I mean, why not? It's going to have a different color for sure. And the color of the purple may bleed, but who cares? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody has high expectations for, what we have to work with right now. So absolutely, you still have to go through the blanching of the leaves. I mean, that's the most important part. And some of that color may bleed out so that it's not going to be quite as vibrant and purple, but it's okay. I mean, cabbage is cabbage. I think that the leaves that I used in the recipe on my site are a little bit more tender, and so they can cut more easily when you're using them in a layered casserole. So you just have to keep in mind that it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult to cut, and you want to make sure that when you blanch those leaves that they are nice and tender. So it may take you another minute, I'm not sure because I haven't done it before, but absolutely. Another thing that you guys can use cabbage for, whether it's red or green, I love using cabbage as, instead of doing lettuce cups, so if you are doing some sort of a ground meat or a ground tofu, or I posted a recipe on my site in this week's dinner planner for raw tacos, then you can absolutely, oh, did we not set the timer? Oh, we didn't. We're such.
But I kind of know what time it is.
Anyway, you can use cabbage leaves as a lettuce cup alternative. So if you're doing tacos, you can use, the cabbage leaf as a taco shell, essentially. Same goes for red cabbage. And red cabbage I add to salads all the time. I mean, I absolutely love it. There's another recipe on my site for a cabbage and fennel and onion saute with sausages. You don't need to use the sausages, or you can use up some like chicken and throw the chicken in there. Doesn't matter if you want to use purple or green or whatever. So I would search my site for cabbage. And then there's another recipe in my cookbook, my first book, Kitchen Matters, barley with melted cabbage. So if you have any extra cabbage, that would be an amazing recipe to use for that. Okay, Anna, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, amazing. Well, this has been great. I love that you guys are giving me something to look forward to in my day and giving me a little break in my day. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Keep bringing those great questions. I'm here to support you. We're all here to help each other. And for now, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you tomorrow.